Hello all and welcome to Supernova Theories and Videos. Today I am going back a long time ago to a galaxy far, far away. God, I can't believe it's been 20 years since Revenge of the Sith came out. I feel old. Cutting off my existential crisis though, today I want to talk about the plans of a different, still older than me, man, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Some know him as Old Ben, but we all know that he is always Ben Kenobi. God, these dad jokes are not helping me stop freaking out about my age. Anyway, ever since the prequels ended, though, we've still learned quite a lot about Obi-Wan. We learned how he fell in love when he was a Padawan. We watched his rivalry with Maul grow until it culminates in the show Star Wars Rebels. And we've seen him battle his PTSD and depression as he accepts his role in the rise of Vader. But by the time we get to A New Hope, we don't really know a ton about what his plan is for Luke. Obviously, he wants to defeat the Sith and see the Empire fall, but that's a pretty big goal. There's got to be something there. Obviously Luke is his hope for how he's going to accomplish it, but what's his plan here? Maybe plan isn't the right word, but there's got to be something at least.
Stop listening after you said we need a plan.
So, with that in mind, let's go back to Revenge of the Sith. As far as Obi-Wan knows, Anakin is dead, and with Padme's last breath, she says there's still good in him. Obviously, we know that she's talking about Anakin in this moment, but you can see the way that he looks at Luke. He believes that Luke is the hope, that the good is in Luke, not Anakin. Then, after all he has lost, he's meeting with Bail Organa and Yoda for them to discuss what to do with the twins. And when Yoda suggests that Luke be raised by his aunt and uncle on Tatooine, Obi-Wan immediately says that he will watch over the boy, because Luke is the hope in his mind that can defeat the Sith. And in doing so, he leaves Leia vulnerable to the Emperor because she's going to be raised by someone who will be a part of the Imperial Senate. Which, yeah, having a Jedi around a senator is going to make them both even more suspicious, but Yoda and Obi-Wan might as well just tattoo potential powerful apprentice on Leia's forehead.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
But back to Obi-Wan. We get to the Kenobi show, and Owen calls Ben out for not really caring about Luke and only caring if he's showing an affinity to the Force. And Owen's right here, Ben is lost and has cut himself off from the Force. Thank the Maker that he doesn't get Luke as his apprentice in this state, because he's probably the worst master that he could possibly have. So if all he cares about is Luke's affinity for the Force, then why doesn't he try to convince Yoda to have him raise Luke from birth and have him trained as a Jedi? I mean, he could argue that Anakin was too old and that's why he fell, and if they make the same mistakes with Luke, he could be just as vulnerable to the same things that Anakin was. Well, first, after all he has lost, in this moment I just can't see a world where he stands up to Yoda. He feels that he failed Anakin, and that's why he did all the terrible things that he's done. And he's right, he did fail Anakin, which, after you watch the Clone Wars TV show, it's less so, but either way, I just can't see him in this moment thinking that he knows better than Yoda, and this would just kind of confirm for him that, hey, all I'm best used for is a bodyguard for this kid until he's ready to be trained by Yoda, who is the best possible teacher for him. But eventually he does become Old Ben, I assume after plenty of training and therapy with Qui-Gon, and he does become the wise old sage who shows Luke his first steps into the Force. So now we get to see their plan in action here. This is what Old Ben and Qui-Gon have been talking about for about 9 years, and for the record, I don't think this is going to be as intricate as, say, Dumbledore's plan for Harry or Coin's plan for Katniss. I think it's more in character for the two of them to listen to the Force and react based off of that, but to take a more kind of laid-back approach.
Not as clumsy or random as a blast.
Okay, maybe Ben should be planning a little bit more. Teach him proper lightsaber etiquette while you're at it. Lightsaber to the face or not, though, I think we can agree that plan isn't really the best word here. I mean, maybe it's closer to like, hey, we have to get Luke to certain checkpoints if he's going to defeat the Sith, and they just listen to the Force as to when Ben should guide Luke to those points. And I think this is the growth that Obi-Wan has to become old Ben, as he finally starts to understand why Yoda wanted Owen and Beru to raise Luke, and why Owen was calling him out for only caring about if Luke is showing or not. He finally understands that he has to wait for the Force to give him a sign, and then he can start to train the boy.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
Yes, that is his sign from the Force, and that's what gets him to kick it into gear. Up until this point, he's just protecting Luke and speaking in idioms as he tries to indirectly pass on his wisdom to Luke, but once he sees Leia's message, he realizes that the Empire is coming to Tatooine, and they will track them down, so Luke has to learn about the Force at this point. There is no other option. So if the time has come to train Luke, then what comes next? I'm sure Ben is just planning on kind of just going over the basics with him until he can get Luke to Yoda for him to really start learning about the Force, but any plan that might be in place is thrown off when Alderaan is blown up. It obviously throws Ben for a loop, but he's gotten stronger in the Force. He calms his mind and realizes what the Empire has done, and by the time they're being pulled into the Death Star by the tractor beam, he's the calm one in this group, and he's the one who is coming up with how they are going to escape. So now he's on the Death Star with Luke, and he feels Vader's presence, and they have not faced off in 9 years. You hear that, Disney? 9 years. They probably won't. Ben will probably kick Vader's butt again, but I digress. So now he's just thinking, I gotta get Luke out of here, ideally without Vader knowing who he is, and he knows Yoda is still out there and is the teacher that he wants Luke to have, and he knows that he has the ability to become one with the Force. He also believes that Luke is the chosen one and can destroy Vader and the Sith, something that he has been unable to do at least twice now, either because part of him deep down still sees Anakin in Vader, or because if he were to kill Vader, he'd be doing it for revenge for that piece of Anakin that is still inside of him. And that's not the Jedi way, which does make it more confusing when you consider how Obi-Wan dies. But a hot take alert, I think if Ben and Vader are both fighting to the death, that old Ben does defeat him, because as strong as Vader has become in the dark side of the Force, Ben has become that strong in the light side, and just in how they match up as fighters, old Ben does have the advantage with him, and that is why he has beaten him to this point. So if he could have won the fight, and we do see how the fight ends, he just kind of holds his saber up and lets Vader take a swipe at him, but he becomes one with the Force before that moment. Vader doesn't actually strike him down, he just hits his cloak, really, and that would mean that old Ben in this moment is choosing to become one with the Force, and is the only one to do so, by the way, in the movies. And just to rattle it off real quick, Qui-Gon gets stabbed, Yoda dies a natural death, Luke sacrifices himself by projecting himself across the galaxy, both kind of embracing and making fun of his legend in a way. Leia sacrifices herself to try to save her son one last time, and then Ben Solo gives his life force up to Rey in a sacrifice as well. So if old Ben is strong enough to choose when he becomes one with the Force, then why in this moment? I mean, it's clearly in response to him seeing Luke, and maybe he just wants Luke to get out of there before he tries to fight the entire Empire trying to save him, but at the same time, he times it with Vader's swing, so he must want Luke to think that Vader killed him. It doesn't feel right because revenge is not the Jedi way, but it's also not the first time that Ben lies to Luke either. He tells him that Darth Vader betrayed and murdered his father.
What I told you was true, from a certain point of view.
Yeah, whatever, Ben, you still lied. But I think this still plays into a plan for old Ben, when you keep in mind that he doesn't want Luke to know that Vader is his father. It's a very twisted, manipulative way to do so, but in a way he's trying to protect Luke and his soul here by keeping that knowledge from him so that he doesn't know that he has to kill his father because he's too dangerous to be left alive. So now 3 years have passed, and Luke has grown stronger in the Force and needs a teacher. But Obi-Wan doesn't want to just come to him as a ghost and, not teach him anything. He wants Luke to learn a lesson that he, Yoda, and the entire Jedi Council failed to learn.
When 900 years old you reach, look as good you will not.
Looks like somebody mixed the clips up there. I was planning on judge me by my size, do you? Close enough. And along with him not wanting Luke to underestimate the Emperor, he's also testing his loyalty here in this moment. That's why he appears as a ghost as Luke is nearly dying on Hoth, And once he does pass this loyalty test, he's arguing on Luke's behalf to Yoda for Yoda to train him when, 20 years ago in Revenge of the Sith, he wasn't going to be standing up to Yoda. That's why Luke was raised by Owen and Beru in the first place. But even with him being on Luke's side for training, he still knows that Luke isn't ready to fight Vader and does not want him to, even saying, I'm not going to interfere on your behalf. He's doing everything he can to stop Luke, but, that's why all these plans still come down to our heroes, whether it's Luke, or Harry Potter, Katniss Everdeen, Elphaba Throp even. The mentors have plans for what they want the hero to do, but it still comes down to the hero at the end of the day. Wow, I just realized that with all 4 of those characters, they don't win the day the way their mentors or deceivers planned for it. It's kind of a cool little twist for the hero's journey. But back to old Ben. He has failed to keep Luke from fighting Vader, and Luke has learned the one thing that Ben was trying to keep from him most. It's a low for him. Now he has to try to convince Luke that he has to destroy his father, and all he can really do is try to get him to see the bigger picture, that the Emperor has already won if he won't fight Vader. But it doesn't work. Luke gives him an opening, though. Yoda spoke of another. So, in this moment, Ben then tells him that Leia is his twin sister, in the hope that he can view it not as trying to kill his father, but as trying to protect his sister. Something we do see that Vader is able to bait Luke into getting him to fight later on. So Ben and Vader here are actually pushing for the same thing, for Luke to fight for his sister. But this only pushes Luke closer to the dark side of the Force, if they're going for the same thing, then in the conversation on Dagobah, then Luke is the one who's right. He takes it as, wait, I have a sister, and if Vader created us both, then there must still be good in him. It means that I'm not fighting for my sister to protect her, it's, I have a sister, and she is so amazing, and I love her so much that my father still has to have some good in him if he could create someone like her. So, in a way, in spite of all of his planning and all he thinks of Luke, and he does think very highly of Luke, Ben still underestimates him, and even more so Anakin. It's what wins the day for the rebels is that Luke is able to turn his father back to the light side of the Force. It's how the Empire is defeated. It's how the Sith fall. Even if somehow evil returns. So that's my theory for today. I love this idea that for the hero's journey that the hero has to grow beyond what the mentor foresaw of them, even if usually the death of the mentor is what pushes them to grow initially. We are what they grow beyond. Oh god, I can't believe I just quoted The Last Jedi too after Rise of Skywalker. I'm gonna get so much hate on this video today. But, let me know in the comments if there's anything I missed for old Ben's journey to becoming this wise old sage, whether it's canon or legends. Let's have fun with the discussion for it, and drop a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you want more like this, and I'll see you next time on STV.